In this video I'll show you how to unwire a bonsai tree. This pine tree has been wired about a year ago, so it's about time to remove the wire. I'll explain you when to do it and what to look for, and also the techniques to actually get rid of the wire. And lastly, I'll also explain whether or not you have to unwire the entire tree or just a section of it. Alright, so the first thing to explain is deciding whether or not the tree needs to be unwired. The reason we put on the wire is that we want the branches to set in a new position or a new shape. And it takes a while for the branches to set in position. So the longer you can keep the wire on, the better, because the more the branch will remain in that exact position. But of course, we don't want the wire to bite into the bark and leave scars. So it's a bit of a fine balance here. You don't want to take it off too early because the branch will just bounce back in its old position. And you don't want to wait too long because you'll have a thick scar that will take time to heal and perhaps will even be visible for a longer time. It also depends on the tree species here. So if you would have, for example, a maple with these sort of scars, it will take a very long time, if at all, for the branches to heal. Whereas if it would be a pine like this, also because it's an evergreen, you don't really see it that badly. Pines, for example, also take a while to set in position, so I would like to keep the wire on a little bit longer as well. So deciding whether or not to unwire is something that you can't do by just waiting an X amount of months. You can say 4 months and then you remove the wire. You really have to you really have to keep an eye out on your trees and remove the wire exactly when it starts to damage, but not leave scars in the branches. So when that moment has come in a tree, you also have to make a decision whether or not you're going to unwire the entire tree. Chances are that some branches, maybe you wired it a little bit stronger, or the branch just grew stronger than some of the other branches. So that means that perhaps in that case you would only remove the wire in a few of these branches and not all of them. The downside of only partially unwiring is that you do have to remember that the tree still has wire on it, and you have to continue checking your tree every now and then to see if the rest of the branches need to be unwired as well. So there's a risk to that. So what I usually do is unwire the entire tree, unless there's really a big difference between the branches in terms of scars or not. Lastly then, so how do you unwire a tree? So it's rather fast to just remove the wire by untangling it from the branch or uncoiling it from the branch. And with thin wire, like 1 millimeter or up to 2 millimeter, perhaps it's doable if you don't damage the new growth and the buds around it. But in most cases, and definitely for strong and thick wire, it's better to cut the wire in every twist of the wire. So every time the wire makes a twist, you just cut it off, and then it just drops off the branch. I'll show you that in a minute. Another thing to look out for is the order of which branch to unwire first. So ideally, if you remember you wired the tree last year, probably you worked from bottom up, and so the last wires have been added on the smaller side branches. So usually it's faster to start in the reverse order. So yeah, I'd start in the top of the tree with the small branches. I unwire the thin branches and then slowly work my way down the tree. Right, so one last thing is the tools for the unwiring process. It's rather simple: a wire cutter and a gin plier. So why do we use a bonsai wire cutter, not just any wire cutter? What I like about the bonsai wire cutter is that it's got a snub-ended nose. So if you want to cut through a piece of wire and it's attached to the bark, you will really only just cut the wire and not bite into the bark. So if you would use like scissors or like a traditional wire cutter, you have much more risk of damaging the bark of the tree. So this sort of design is just ideal for bonsai. And then a gin plier, sometimes if you untangle a bit, it helps just to be able to grab at the beginning of the wire somewhere. But like I said, I would only use that on very thin wire. The last thing then, if you talk about tools and materials, is there's of course two types of wire that we use for bonsai. We have aluminum, but we also use copper. Copper wire is much more stiff and much stronger than the aluminum wire. So I wouldn't unwire or untangle, uncoil copper wire at all. I would just cut it off. With every loop, just make the cut. With aluminum, it's a little bit easier. And then one last question that I often get is like, do you reuse wire? Do you take the wire off and use it on another tree or the same tree perhaps? And I never do it. I don't like it. It's too much work because you have to straighten up those lines again, and there's tricks to do it, but to me the cost of wire is too low to really go through that effort. Plus, if you use new wire, it's just easier to apply than wire that has already been applied before. So I think it's also resulting in nicer, neater wiring if you use the new wires. But it's really a decision up to you. You can do it. That's totally fine. All right, let's go in close up, and I'll show you how to unwire the tree. Alright, so I'm about halfway unwiring the tree. I think I've selected the most difficult tree to show the actual unwiring because it's so compact and so dense. It was also a lot of work to wire the tree the year ago. But I'm progressing nicely. I'm working top down, just making a lot of cuts so that most of the wire just falls off. So you see a lot of this small stuff. And I'll work my way down unwiring the entire tree. So with removing the wire in this top section, it's also the moment where I can actually see if the wire and if the branches have set in their new position, and mostly it has, so I'm quite pleased with this. I might have to rewire the tree, but not right now. I think for now it's just fine. I'll let it grow and prune it back a little bit as well, because it's fall right now, so that's a good time to do that anyway. But probably maybe in half a year, so in springtime perhaps, I might have to rewire the tree to set everything in position. But the main shape of the tree seems to have set quite nicely. So another benefit of using a bonsai wire cutter is not just the snub-nosed end of the cutter, but also the fact that it's quite long, so I can really work into the tree, and you see me doing that from all kinds of angles just to be able to make those cuts in the wires. If I would have like a short scissor, it's much harder to get in there. So from here I can just go in there, here. So if you unwire a tree, always use a good bonsai wire cutter. Alright, so completely unwired the tree. And like I said, I think the shape is still good, so it didn't really fall back in the old position, so the wire has been on the tree for long enough. The only thing to do now is prune the tree a little bit, so I'll do that next. And then that's all for today. Perhaps in a year I might detail wire some of the new growth again. By pruning the tree back a little bit today, there will be some more new growth, so wiring and styling a bonsai tree is a continuous thing, but the main shape has been set now, so from here on it will be refinement with small wire. The big branches are all where I want to have them. So I hope this video on unwiring your bonsai has been useful. If you have any questions, just post them underneath this video in the comments.
Learn how to create your own bonsai trees by enrolling in one of our online bonsai courses. We explain techniques like pruning, wiring and repotting, and you can ask questions to the teachers. For the curriculums and free lessons, go to bonsaiempire.com/courses.